A very good morning, Year 9. I hope you are keeping well. If I could have your attention for the next 5 or 10 minutes while I talk about a topic which is extremely important and very high on our list of priorities at the moment. And it's a theme which Mrs. Cooper addressed with you in Assembly last week. And that is, in essence, how we treat the female half of our school community. And before I come on to the specifics of what I want to say, a bit of context really, a bit of background of how this discussion has come about. I think the things in life, aren't there, which at the time you don't quite realise how important they are, and their significance becomes apparent further down the line. However, there are other things in life which happen, they are quite earth-shattering, they will bring about irreversible change, often for the better. They are hugely significant in the grand scheme of things. And I think there have been 2 of those sort of events in the last 12 months in this COVID period we are living in, which in itself is a historical event, and I'm sure generations in the future will study it in schools. But the first one was, of course, the murder of George Floyd in the United States by a serving police officer who has subsequently been charged and prosecuted for George's murder. And out of that sprung up the Black Lives Matter movement, and also a global anti-racism movement, if you like, which lots of schools and organisations and institutions have certainly taken on board. Now, we were on a journey anyway of anti-racism, and this has helped feed our development on that and move forward perhaps even quicker. Now, clearly that's been hindered a bit by COVID and lockdown, but we have started the anti-racism ambassador training, and we have tweaked some of our policies, and more to come on that around the curriculum, etc. The second event, of course, was the murder of Sarah Everard, a young woman in London, again by a police officer, the Met Police, and the tragedy which happened there, and the response by society, by women's groups and beyond, and got us all to reflect, didn't it, and woke us up to the treatment of women and girls in society. So the parallels there, aren't there, between those two major events. And I'm very conscious I sit here as a white male and the privilege which comes with both those things, but it's my responsibility as head teacher to make sure change happens and we address these things in an appropriate way and not before time. Because I think we probably thought in society on the issues of race and the issues of gender equality would come a lot further than perhaps we have. I think many people are quite naive in that sense, but certainly work to be done. I think I'm also would suggest that rather than punishment and sanctioning, the best approach is always education and preemptive measures rather, so these things don't happen in the first place. And that is our job, to educate young people on a range of issues, and nothing more important than things around race and around gender equality. Okay. And I suppose I also come at this because as a father, as a son, as a husband, as a friend, as a brother, the way you hear of some women being addressed, and I think, well, if that was my mother or my wife or my daughters or my sister, I wouldn't possibly tolerate that. So how can some men come out with these things? So there's work to be done. And of course, those 2 things, the George Floyd and the Sarah Everard murder, there are parallels, and this nonsense around with, well, all lives matter. Well, yes, of course, all lives matter, but we're focusing on black lives and disproportionately being affected by the systems and institutions in place. And if you say all lives matter, you're barking up the wrong tree, you're missing the point. And likewise, people say, well, it's not all men with this gender inequality and treatment of women. No, it's not all men, but all men have a responsibility to do something about it. Okay, so again, let's not hear those phrases, all lives matter, or it's not all men, because you are completely missing the point if that is your argument. On the back of the whole Sarah Everard incident and women's movement sort of nationally, again, understandably and quite rightly, a number of you young ladies in school in Year 9 in particular feel very impassioned and emboldened and empowered and are coming forward and speaking up. And I welcome that. As a father of 2 daughters who are very, quite rightly, political and opinionated and have strong views, I would encourage that. And thank you for speaking to us. And we've had already Mrs. Cooper had a group approach her. She arranged for them to meet with me the week after. We've had this week, or last week it will be when this video is delivered, a group that met with Mr. Tomlinson and Mrs. Cooper and furthered that conversation and got their thoughts across. So thank you, ladies, for coming forward. And the group that I spoke to, I asked them to put some things together, which they have. One was around statistics. I'm not going to read them all out because ultimately they're very damning, aren't they? And there's no argument. They're completely unequivocal and incontrovertible facts of what the treatment of women like in UK society. And one that stands out, of course, is that 97% of women who are sexually harassed or assaulted, I think by the age of 24 was a figure as well. And that's horrendous and something we have to respond to. And that's not to mention the number of women killed by their partners or by family members. It's not to mention the stats around rape and more frustratingly and sadly the number of rape cases which don't go to court, which are thrown out, and the lack of prosecutions, the lack of support for rape and sexual assault victims. You have to conclude it's a patriarchal society which doesn't cater for these things as much as it should do. So thank you, ladies, for sharing those stats with me. And again, we can discuss that in more in the future, but they are there, they are very revealing, and they are very damning. Above and beyond that, how women have to alter their behaviour on these matters, whether it be out of school, I'm talking first of all, walking home a certain way to avoid a building site, to avoid catcalling, or walking home a different way because it's better lit, or staying in groups walking home, or on a night out going to toilets because you're fearful of being assaulted in some way in a nightclub, in a bar, walking home with keys between your knuckles for fear of assault, choosing carefully what you wear so you can't be accused of having asked for it. All these things are horrendous and in a civilised society will not be and cannot be tolerated. So again, we're aware this is a reality for women on a daily basis. And again, lots of facts around that presented to me by the young ladies in question, so I thank you again. We're talking, aren't we, first and foremost about life at Wellington School. And it upsets me deeply and angers me for some of the stories which have been shared with me and which we have to respond to and will respond to in due course. Now that we have been made more aware, and almost this assembly is drawing a line under these things and saying this will happen if these things continue. So how can it be right that girls at Wellington School, in any school, are subjected to regular sexual comments or comments about their physical appearance, or being rated about their physical appearance, or subjected to jokes of a sexual nature, or are the victims, and I use that word, of sexting, where they are receiving or being asked for certain images, and when they don't deliver are being called the names under the sun? How can that be appropriate? How can it be right they are subject to gossip? How can it be right that young ladies at school are subjected to unwelcome physical contact? How can it be right that there is gossip going around today, but there are jokes around and comments around rape culture and things like being quoted to me in the dinner queue, get to the back of the queue or I'm going to rape you? How can that be acceptable in any society, in any school environment? Well, it's a rhetorical question because quite clearly it's not. But these are stories being recounted to me by young ladies at Wellington School, and I'm thankful they brought it to our attention. So that's reality. That's reality. That's what we are dealing with, and there needs to be a response. Indeed, there is. I suppose what I'm saying here to all of you is that, as I said before, it stops here. The line is being drawn. If you are somebody in your ignorance or naivety, or maybe worse, has made these sorts of comments, then you need to know that moving forward, sanctions will be imposed. And we have that phrase, don't we, Wellington, elsewhere, that we don't want to be bystanders, we are upstanders. And whether you are a male member of the school community who has said or done such things, whether you are a male or female member of the community who has heard these things going on or has witnessed these and done nothing about it, or whether you are somebody who is a victim of these things and has thus far stayed quiet, we need people to stand up. We have our anti-racism ambassadors who are going to speak out, and likewise we need people who are the same on this gender issue. I'm delighted on the back of these conversations we're having, not only some policy changes, but Mrs. Cooper tells me the Gender Equality Council has been set up, or will be set up, with some of the young ladies who come forward, but also getting some young men involved as well. So yes, there is lots going on. So my message to you is, we are listening, we are responding. This is not about one or two young ladies coming forward and speaking about their experiences. This is about the whole school community responding in an appropriate fashion. So I don't want to issue threats and warnings. I want to educate and get us to be mindful and awareness raising and conduct ourselves differently moving forward. I think one of the most telling things I've heard in recent weeks is one young lady who was talking about boys generally, but her brothers, whatever it might have been, and said, I just don't want boys in this school, whether it be boys, brothers, whatever, turning out to be like their fathers or blokes of that generation who think certain comments and actions are acceptable. Times are changing, and at Wellington School we welcome people to come forward with these opinions and help us, because we need this advice, we need this guidance, and thankfully you provide us with that and steered us on the right path. Okay, it's 11 minutes now, folks. I'm going on a bit. I hope you get the message. I think you appreciate where I'm coming from. It's a collective effort to solve these problems and to make sure the experience that some young women have in society outside is not the reality for people in the future. It's a big ask of you. It's a big job on our hands, but I know we'll make progress together. Thank you for listening. Any issues you may have, please come discuss them with me or any of the members of staff, and let's work together on this. Have a great day. Take care. Thank you.